Before we get into this, guys, I do just want to say something really quick, and I made the same comment when I hit 500 subs, but seriously, 600 subscribers is legitimately 599 more than I thought I'd ever have, so thank you guys for that. I really do appreciate it. But getting into this episode, and I want things to move quick because if you've been watching my content, you know I can be quite long-winded. Simply put, there will be no simming in this episode. This episode focuses solely on rebuilding this team. Now, I asked you guys at the end of the last episode for your comments and what direction should we take this team, and I've taken those comments, I've taken my own personal opinion, and 3 days, legitimately 3 days worth of scouring every roster with the exception of Boston's because I don't want too many of the repeat players, but I've just looked at every single roster, and I finally put together trades that I really feel like will be good for this team. Now, if I swing and miss, that'll be a bit embarrassing. I don't want to be Jim Benning Jr. over here, but looking at your guys' comments, if you know, hey, trade the Sedins, but also kind of keep it realistic with no trade clauses. Don't move the Sedins. Tank for Austin Matthews. Trade for first-round picks. Trade for someone like Zach Smith, who's good defensively. He's physical, and he's fast, and don't worry, I'll get back to that in a bit. Sign all the free agents. Trade for Ben Bishop. I've taken all that to heart, and I can only hope that by the end of this, when I show you guys all of these trades, that things make sense, that nobody is outrageously pissed off, and that this team is set up for the future, which I think you guys will agree at the end of this, that this franchise as a whole is in a much better spot from top to bottom. So getting down to business, our first trade is with the Edmonton Oilers. Now, why would we trade Ryan Miller to Edmonton? Simply put, Cam Talbot's still designated as a backup, so I felt like it was the best spot. Now, there were a few players I was absolutely looking at. First of all, not even players, they're in 29th, so I was looking for their first round pick. And I'll tell you guys straight up right now, I didn't acquire any extra first round picks. The asking price was just way too high. I went a different direction, again, as I just mentioned, in terms of making this organization better from top to bottom. As far as players on Edmonton goes, I was looking at Nugent Hopkins, bit too expensive. Nail Yakupov, too expensive. I was also looking at someone like Griffin Reinhart, but we decided to go another direction. So first off, this trade, you have Ryan Miller, obviously right now our current starting goalie, mid-30s, does not have a future on this team. We also give up Alex Biega, who is beyond the age of 26. He is just a cap hit at this point. And Sautner, I don't know how to pronounce it, but regardless, he doesn't have much of a future with us either. We trade them for Rob Klinkhammer, who could be a depth fourth line guy for us. Doesn't really have much of a future. He's more of a placeholder. We also get a placeholder goalie in Lundstrom. Every team has at least 49 or 50 contracts. Therefore, all of these trades have to be player for player. He obviously swaps with Ryan Miller. We get 2 third-round picks. Granted, Florida and Pittsburgh are still doing very well this season, so these picks won't be the highest, but it's all a part of the big plan here. And as far as Anton Slepyshev, however the hell you pronounce it, low top 6 potential. He is 21 years old. I will say this. Think of who we already have. Drake Caggiula, Bo Horvat, Jake Virtanen, Granlund might turn into something. Jared McCann, Cole Castles, Jimmy Vesey, Ronald Kennens. We have some great talent on this team already, so he fits in perfectly. If he turns in to a top 6 forward, awesome. If he ends up being top 9, awesome. It's a win-win for us, and I think you will agree once you see, I should say, what else we do with this team. But this is our first trade, Ryan Miller to the Edmonton Oilers. Our second trade, and I'm proud of this one. I really am. Radim Vrbata, Lyndon Vey, and Kanata, a backup goalie who simply isn't going to make it, along with a 2021 second-round pick to the Carolina Hurricanes for Elias Lindholm, Jacob Slavin, Eddie Lack, and a 4th and 5th round pick over the next 2 years. Let's break this one down quickly. Radim Vrbata obviously has a considerable amount of value. I consider him to be interchangeable with Elias Lindholm. Lindholm is an absolute beast. I don't need to explain that to you. Linden Vey, top 9 potential. We just got somebody who I feel like fits that role better. We have a logjam of center prospects. Horvat, McCann, Castles. He's not going to fit in. Kanata, interchangeable with Eddie Lack, as well as that second round pick. By 2021, 5 years from now, we don't need our second round picks. We are going for cups if all things go to plan. Elias Lindholm, an absolute beast. Jacob Slavin. Now this is where Zach Smith comes in and the idea of what type of player Zach Smith is. He's fast, he's physical, and he's defensively responsible. That is the mentality I am going to have this team take over the course of this GM mode. We want our top 2 lines to be offensive and dynamic, but the third, the fourth line, and the defense, we want size, we want strength, we want speed, and we want responsible defenders. Jacob Slavin could very well turn into that, and he's only 21 years old. Now getting into Eddie Lack, I don't want to spend too much time on each trade. Eddie Lack, to me, is perfect. Rather than going for a Ben Bishop, or even I took a look at Detroit with Howard and Mrazek. I took a look at St. Louis with Brian Elliott and Jake Allen. Eddie Lack, to me, is the perfect goalie for us right now. Sure, he's listed as a backup goalie, but at 84 overall, he'll probably fall to 83 after the trade. But regardless, for me right now, he's good enough to be our starter, and then once Thatcher Demko is ready, he is the perfect, the ideal backup. I am willing to take a hit on goaltending for the moment, and hey, when we come to free agency, if there's a goalie there who we can sign, I'll do it, and I'll give him a year or 2 contract, probably 2, but for right now, Eddie Lack to me is the perfect goalie for this team. We add a 4th and a 5th rounder to complete the deal, to get a little bit of depth in these next 2 drafts, which are absolutely huge for us. To me, this is an amazing deal, and I am more than happy to do it. Eddie Lack, welcome back to Vancouver, where you belong. Our next trade, and admittingly, guys, this was a difficult trade to make. I really like Alex Edler. He's only 29 years old, but we can get just so much in this trade from Alex Edler alone. Labatt is just not a good prospect whatsoever. This trade solely hinders on Alex Edler and his value, and we can get some great stuff from the St. Louis Blues. First of all, Colton Parayko. I will absolutely admit it. I have a man crush on Colton Parayko. It will haunt me forever that the Bruins didn't take him and that St. Louis got him the pick after the Bruins didn't take him. But in this game, as I said, he is exactly what we want. He has the physicality. The defense is there. If his skating can improve, he is going to be absolutely perfect for this team. Dimitri asked him whether or not he turns into what we would like him to turn into. Who knows? But he is already an 83 overall. More than happy to get him. We get a 3rd rounder in 2017, again improving our depth over the next 2 years. We also get a 4th and Columbus's 5th. I love this trade as well. Tough to let go of Alex Edler, but we do get his replacement in the same trade. So essentially to me, it's Edler for Parayko and then Labatt for Yaskin, a 3rd, a 4th, and a 5th. I love this trade. Trade number 4, and it's the big one. I'm going to hit you hard here. This is not the last trade, but let's get this out of the way. The Sedin twins to Tampa Bay. In the interest of keeping this somewhat realistic, number 1, we haven't traded them for Ben Bishop, but number 2, just in general, we've traded them to a legitimate contender while also getting players that Tampa could realistically or would realistically give up. If we look at our side first, Stewart and Cederholm, not really players that are going to turn into anything. I don't need to explain what the Sedins offer. But on the other side, Jonathan Drouin, Alex Killorn, Vlad Nemesnikov, and Schuster as a defenseman with a 7th round pick 2 years from now thrown in. Taking a look at each of them, Jonathan Drouin, medium top 6 potential. He could turn in to one of those guys. Again, slowly but surely, I have added extra prospects in case the Kajulas, the Virtanens, the Horvats, the McCanns, in case they don't turn out, we're also getting other players that could make it in terms of those top 2 skill lines. Alex Killorn, I wish his defense and his skating was a little bit better, but he could be on our 3rd line for years to come. Nemesnikov, another one of those guys that I was talking about, much like Anton Slepchev. And the last man a part of this trade, Andre Schuster, 6'7", 225 pounds. If he can improve his skating over the next 2 years, I'll be more than happy with him. Of course, we threw in a 7th round pick just to kind of cap off this deal. But the Sedins, again, in fairness, they're going to a contender. They're going there together. It's a tough trade, but the Sedins are not in our cup winning window at this point. We need to move on. We're going to move on. Bon voyage, you're closer to Sweden at this point, but the Sedins are now members of the Tampa Bay Lightning. Now this trade on the surface looks like a little bit of a clusterfuck, but when it comes down to it, it is Dan Hamhuis for Anthony Mantha. I said I wanted to keep it somewhat realistic. I can somewhat view Detroit as trading Anthony Mantha. His name has been thrown out there quite a bit. His value wasn't that great, which is why we have been able to tack on 4th and 5th round picks. But at this point, I am fairly confident in our top 6 for the future, and Anthony Mantha is going to be a part of that. Now, I'll admit this next trade is simply for me. Zhukanov is a playmaker, but he's only projected to be bottom 6. Obviously, you'd want him to be at least top 9 or even top 6. Anton Rodin, same way, 24 years old, only a 71 overall. Brisebois could turn into something. I'm not willing to wait. On the other end, Frankie Corrado, somebody Vancouver never should have given up on. We are getting him back. TJ Brennan, again, somebody I can fully admit I am just a huge fan of. He won't have much in terms of progression, but I want to see what he can turn into. And then we have a 4th, a 6th, and a 7th over 3 different years just to add to the draft depth. This is more for me, but I am doing it anyway. Sue me. TJ Brennan and Frankie Corrado are Vancouver Canucks. Our next trade, and it looks a bit lopsided, but again, I am more than happy to do it. You have defensive prospects, or 2 defensive prospects, who really aren't going to pan out to be much, a forward prospect who isn't going to be anything, and 2 7ths for Victor Svedberg. 6'8", an absolute monster. 2 years to develop. Yes, he is only a 78 overall, but if he turns it around, it's a risk pick. But again, we're not giving up anything. We're giving up a defenseman who's projected to be lower than him, someone we know is not going to make the NHL, 2 guys who we know aren't going to make the NHL, and 7th round picks. It's a move that gets rid of unneeded depth that we have and adds depth that could pan out and eventually make our NHL roster. And our final trade for now, that's right, this is finally ending. Our final trade, 2 more guys we know aren't going to make the NHL, and Grenier and Zalewski, along with a 2021 4th round pick for Paul Gaustad and Eric Nystrom. Why? It's their cap hit. With trading so many guys like the Sedins, Hamhuis, and Edler, we needed to get back up towards the cap floor to have some maneuverability, at least until the end of this season. Obviously, Nystrom has a 2-year deal, but this move is simply for cap, Nystrom, and Gaustad. Sorry to leave Nashville, sorry to put you in this situation, but we need you. So as we close out this episode by looking at what the current lineups are, I just want to reemphasize a few of my points. That being, these trades were meant to just essentially cut corners on a rebuild. Yes, I could have gone the route of getting truly elite players, but we still would have had nothing on the back end. Yes, we could have refilled through the draft and through free agency, but I didn't want to do it that way. I used my best players to rebuild this team from top to bottom. Go ahead and look at what the Vancouver roster is by default, and then take out Kajula, take out Thatcher Demko and Stetcher. Just, they have nobody. They absolutely have nobody. They have good high-end prospects, but I wanted to rebuild this team. And think of it this way. We still have players we want to trade. We still have free agency. We still have the draft. Who knows who we are going to get and how much better this team will get. Who's to say we aren't going to draft, say, an Austin Matthews and get that really elite player. Or defensively, Jacob Chitrin's in the draft. Free agency, maybe we get Steven Stamkos if Tampa doesn't re-sign him. Who knows what happens in the next few episodes. But I stand by the decisions I made in this episode, and hopefully you guys agree with them as well. But as we take a look at the lines, top line right now is Kajula, Bo Horvat, and Elias Lindholm. Second line, Jonathan Drouin. Sutter, he's one of those guys where I've set up the trade block right now, so guys like Sutter are on it. If we get offers, cool. If not, we'll hold on to him. In the meantime, he has 6 years worth of term. I'll look to get rid of him in free agency if we don't get, or during the free agency period, if we don't get any trade offers. I'm finding it very, very tough to find moves to make. That's why it legitimately took me 3 days to find trades that I really felt comfortable in. It's, you know, every team, as I said, has a full roster. So it was really tough to make moves. That will get easier in the off season. So Sutter stays. Yannick Hansen's in the same boat. I love what he is. If you look at his skating, his defense, his physicality, he fits the mold of what I want this team to be. But he is 29 years old. Is 29 years old that old? No, he's in his prime, so maybe he stays. Moving over to the third line, we have Dmitry Yaskin, Alex Killorn, and Alex Burrows. Burrows, as you would assume, is in the same boat as Sutter and Hansen. The problem is I don't think we're going to get any offers for him because I tried to trade him at least a dozen times. Nobody wants to take him because of his cap hit. So if we have to hold on to him until the offseason, that's fine. If we have to hold on to him through next season, so be it. The fourth line, we have Emerson Edom. I didn't trade him. I want to give him a chance. I want to see what he can do. Do I think he'll make it? Not one bit, but I'm at least going to hold on to him for the meantime. And we also have Gostad and Eric Nystrom. Defensively, and I should have pointed this out as well, we have maneuverability, but I don't want to send anybody down, which is why Nikita Trampkin's here. I could send him down, but I don't want to mess with the morale system anymore. If you guys watched the Bruins GM mode, you saw it with Brad Marchand. You saw it with Sheldon Darling, just how impactful just sending somebody down or scratching somebody can be in terms of sending them into a downward spiral. But defensively, we have Trampkin and Tanev, Spiza with Parayko, and Hutton with Schuster. Goaltending, as you would expect, is Lack with Markstrom. Our scratches right now are Higgins, Dorsett, and Prost, so nobody important. And as we switched over to the AHL, just remember this as well. Jake Virtanen's back in junior, and we have one unsigned defensive prospect in Olsen. But in Utica right now, it's VC. Jimmy VC. Jesus, I almost said that awkwardly. I did say it awkwardly. What am I talking about? He is with Granlund and Anthony Mantha. Second line is Kennens, McCann, and Cole Castles. Third line, Nemesnikov, Gaunce, and Slepchev. Berchke with Klinkhammer and Jacek. Defensively, if I don't hit the wrong trigger this time out, we have Slavin with Stetcher, Svedberg, Corrado, and then Padan with TJ Brennan. Let me know if I should put Jordan Subban in instead of Andre Padan. They're both seventh defenseman potential. They're somewhat interchangeable. As far as scratches go, there's a lot of them, as you would expect. Weber, Bartkowski, Archibald, many others. Lundstrom as well. Goalies, as you would expect, Demko with Bachman. But as I said, guys, and I think I've emphasized my points enough. This team needed a massive rebuild, a massive rebuild, and we've essentially taken a shortcut now to get the organizational depth that we've needed, and also, of course, as I said, looking forward to the future with the draft, with free agency, and potentially other trades down the road. But that'll do it for this episode, guys. As I've said a million times by now, let me know what you think in the comments below of these deals. And in the next episode, we get back into the sim. We'll finish up season 1, and potentially, because let's be honest, we're missing the playoffs, potentially we might do at least the draft, but I'll probably leave the entire off season for a whole different video. So why am I teasing that? I don't know. But thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.